I'm not a little bit like Richard might have said, I'm not an expert in sustainability. I do a job which is around HR and trying to support this drive within the organization of doubling our size, but at the same time reducing the environmental impact that we have. And that's probably the first. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is really a journey that I'm on. I'm on this journey very much at a personal level because there are a lot of challenges that we're facing right now, which I don't know the answers to all of those challenges yet. But through people like yourselves and talking to others, hopefully I'm going to learn more. But what I'll do is I'm going to share with you just some of the thoughts that we've had in terms of how do you go about embedding, I suppose is the word, this concept of sustainability within the organization. And where have we had some success and where have been some of the challenges. I think to start with, just getting it on the agenda. Richard has spoken a little bit about the board process. I think we went through something very, very similar. But I think there have been some advantages to an organization like Unilever in getting it on the agenda. One is, and I think you should think about this, and never forget about just considering what is the heritage of your organization. The heritage of Unilever is an organization that a guy brought a bar of soap to people who were very, very poor because he wanted to make cleanliness commonplace in people's homes nearly 100 years ago. And that heritage is a heritage that we have tried to maintain through the organization and have tried to integrate it into our sustainable living plan. Where, I suppose 100 years ago, the purpose for Unilever now is not so much about bringing cleanliness and making that commonplace in people's homes, but it's about making sustainable living commonplace in people's homes. And so I think it's really important that one goes back to the heritage of your organization and use that as a very positive factor in helping to begin to embed, to engage, to drive the agenda. I think the second thing is very much ensuring that the strategy is at the heart of what one is doing. And so for Unilever, what we've done is we've ensured that the only way we will achieve the sustainable living plan that we have, the only way we will achieve it is through our brands. There's no other way in which we are going to achieve the ambitions that we've set ourselves if we don't do it through our brands. And that in itself brings it to the core of the business. It's the core of the business. And what we've been able to do is we've been able to link the sustainable living plan to the growth of Unilever. And if you listen to Paul Polman talk, and you listen to leaders in Unilever talk about the sustainable living plan, the only reason we're doing it is to drive the growth of Unilever. And there's a real commitment, particularly from Paul, and a belief that consumers into the future are going to want to use brands that are going to help to make sustainable living commonplace in their homes. And that might not be, we might not have that insight today, but it's a foresight that we've developed. It's a little bit like Steve Jobs. I'm sure he didn't ask a consumer whether they needed an iPad. But he had the foresight, he had the courage, he had the conviction to believe that that's what consumers are going to need. And I know these are really intangible things that I'm talking about, but I think they are really, really important as you begin to try and get this whole concept of sustainability onto the agenda in your organization. What is the heritage of the organization? Is this really going to be a driver for growth for your organization? And how can we ensure that we make that link between your brands or the kind of organization that you are and how you can get growth through that particular plan that you might put in place? So that's, I think, a bit of how we've kind of begun to get it on the agenda within Unilever. And also, I mean, of course, I'm really lucky. I work for an organization who has a CEO who's absolutely committed to this. And I suppose the most important piece around that is that, one has gone public on this. And in going public, I mean, that begins to, make sure that you haven't only got internal employees who are holding you accountable, and holding one another accountable for success in this area, but you've also got the external environment looking to see what sort of progress you're making. I think there have been some pockets of success for us within Unilever in this particular area, and the pockets of success have been in the more, I suppose, areas of the business that it's easier to apply the sustainability lens in everything that you do. So in supply chain, some real pockets of success, and I suppose, one of the real benefits through some of the efforts in the supply chain has been some of the real cost benefits. If I were to have played a more active role in developing our strategy going forward, I think one of the things I would have tried to do is on reflection, is monetarized earlier the value that sustainability will bring to the organization. So what is the real cost benefit? And the cost benefits, out of the supply chain, particularly within the factories, in terms of areas such as packaging. I think we should have made more of that in being able to convince other parts of the organization, whether that's marketing, whether that's finance, whether that's HR, that this is a really good thing to do. I think there's also been some kind of success in R&D. I think scientists today, that's part of what they want to do. They want to innovate. And when you put a lens called sustainability through which they should look at their innovations, wow, you come up with completely different innovations. So I'll give you one example. We've now innovated a fabric conditioner that requires one to rinse or use less water when you are doing hand washing in rural parts of the world. We would never have come up with that fabric conditioner or that would reduce the amount of water required had we not had a lens called sustainability through which we did the R&D process. So those I think are some of the areas of success that we are facing right now. For me, there are two really big challenges that I'm facing in really trying to embed this more within the organization. I think the first one is very much has got to do with the kind of leadership cadre. And I think Paul Polman, he understands this, he gets this. The board understand it. How do you engage other parts of the organization, other leaders in the organization with respect to this agenda? And that it becomes just part of everyday speak. And so therefore I think that, getting leaders to become ambassadors, helping them with workshops that you might run in this particular area, getting them to lead those workshops, not letting them sit back and have some sustainability expert come in and lead the workshop. Making sure that in a number of what I would call the business processes in your organization, there is this lens called sustainability in that business process. So let me just give you an example. Our strategy development process at one point didn't have sustainability as a key element of the process. Our innovation planning process didn't have sustainability as a key element. Our business risk process didn't have sustainability as a key element. Now building sustainability, the sustainability lens, into some of those key business processes has really helped to engage leaders more and get them to ask the right kind of questions when they're going through either a strategy process or a risk analysis or whatever the case might be. So I think there's some kind of desktop exercise that needs to be done in looking at some of the business processes, just like you might do in R&D and say to your scientists, we want you to think of innovation through a lens called sustainability. So I want you to do the same when it comes to strategy development, when it comes to risk analysis, et cetera, et cetera. The second area I think that has become a real challenge for us is, as Martin was saying, in the marketing space. And it's not so much, the challenge is not so much a challenge of getting marketeers to engage the concept of, through their brand, making the world a better place. Marketeers today, that's what of course they want to do that. They really want to do that. To work on a brand like Omo, for example, or Persil in this country, and know that that brand could reduce the incidence and the amount of water that you use one day, wow, what a fantastic thing as a marketeer to want to do. It kind of gives me a moral purpose as to why I want to work in marketing. The challenge is changing our behavior as consumers. That's the challenge. The challenge is, as I said earlier with the Steve Jobs example, the challenge is how do you get marketeers to have what I think more foresight? How do you begin to instill more foresight in your marketeers such that they can begin to think about what does this mean in terms of consumer behavior and changing the behavior of consumers, so that through their brands they can bring about that behavior change. And I think it's possible. Of course it's possible. So working with our marketeers right now in this whole area of foresight and developing and getting them to better, rather than going to consumers and getting from consumers what we call insight, how do we get from consumers, how do we have more foresight about what consumers are going to want in the future, and help them then to bring about ways in which they might go and do their advertising, their product development, et cetera, in such a way that begins to drive some of the changes in consumer behavior. I also think that what we're beginning to see is within the marketing function is some areas of success. And I think, as you see these pockets of success where there is a link between what I call the sustainable goal and the brand, it's to celebrate that within the organization more and more. We haven't been doing enough of that, celebrating the successes. So let me give you an example. If we take Lifebuoy, if Lifebuoy is a soap, one of the targets that we have in our plan is to get to 1 billion people and improve their health and their well-being. And Lifebuoy, if we can get people in the developing world to wash their hands more with Lifebuoy, more times a day, it reduces the incidence of diarrhea. And as we've begun to market the brand around, the fact that Lifebuoy is able to do that, as well as the functional aspects of Lifebuoy, we've seen some significant growth in the developing world in Lifebuoy. And so you see the purpose of the brand together with not only the moral purpose, the functional purpose as well, together with the business benefit. Celebrate that. Lipton Tea is another example. As we've begun to develop this partnership with the Rainforest Alliance, consumers are beginning to say, so that tea is coming from estates that have been certified by the Rainforest Alliance. There must be something good in that tea. And the perception and the attributes around that brand are improving. And I think we've got to celebrate more of these successes to show this link between the growth of the brand and the sustainability challenge that we've got. I don't know how much more time have I got? 1 minute? Okay. I could go on and on. I really could go on and on. But I do think, some of the persuasive drivers for us have been, I think, some of the things that I've spoken to about, making this link between whether it's a service or a product or whatever, but that brand growth, that service growth, and the sustainability agenda. Making this better monetizing, the cost savings and the benefits. So it's not only about growth, but it's also about the profitability of the organization, and monetizing that a little earlier in the process, I think has been a big lesson for me. And then finally, I think the real challenge that I'm also facing right now is yes, we can talk about changing some of the business processes, but I really think that there's a role for HR to play in this space. There's a real role for us in HR to play in this space. And I can tell you, I've been struggling this year, even within my own HR function, to get the message across, to say we have got a role to play. And let me tell you what I think that role is from an HR point of view. If we want to embed it more in the organization, then yes, let's look at the business processes, but I also think we should look at what I would call the talent development cycle, and what role can HR play to influence that cycle in such a way that it becomes part of your business. So for example, just like I said, look at risk analysis through the lens of sustainability. Let's look at how we're attracting people to our organization through the lens of sustainability. Is it very much part? Is it a differentiating employee proposition for us right now so that we can attract some great talent? And the type of talent that we then bring into the organization helps to bring some of the changes. So look at that. What are we doing in the area of attraction? What are we doing in the area of what I would call performance management in terms of target setting, the setting of targets? I don't think annual targets, but I think there's something about long-term incentives and whether you pay long-term incentives dependent upon how well you are doing in the area of sustainability. What about the area of skill development, and where are you building it into different aspects of the organization? Sustainability is part of the skill development curriculum, leadership development, and I can go on. But I think there's a real role for us in HR to be playing, so we can help to begin to better embed it within the culture of the organization. Right, red light is going. I've got nothing. I've probably got a couple of other things to say, but just to say, I mean, we're on a journey. It's a great challenge. And I can tell you the most inspiring thing about it is that I work for an organization which I now think has really defined its moral purpose. And it's that moral purpose that gets me up and gets me to work most mornings. And that is to bring sustainable living and make that commonplace in people's homes. So thank you.
Thank you, Geoff. Thank you very much.